Hey, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Hope everybody's doing well. Hey, I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer, founder of the African History Network. And today I wanted to talk about a subject we've talked about in the past few days, talk about it again today. And this deals with dispelling myths about slavery, dispelling myths about slavery. I do my show every Sunday night, and we're starting to do our Thursday night show on Blog Talk Radio again. And I have the Facebook fan page, the African History Network. We have over 900,000 followers. And oftentimes, misinformation comes out about slavery. There's a lot of myths about it. So I've come across a couple of articles in the past few days that deal with myths about slavery. So we're going to dispel some of those. And I also do this in our online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so we're going to deal with dispelling 5 myths about slavery, and then also I'll do an overview of, I'll do a brief preview of the online course that I teach, and we're going to this evening, tonight, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. We'll do a special overview of it for those who register today. We'll do an overview of the past 3 sessions. And remember, all the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again as well. Okay. Now, anytime I speak or do a presentation, or oftentimes on my show, I know I'm going to say some things people never heard before, may say some things people disagree with, may say some things people don't like. So just because, I may say something that's outside the circumference of your own awareness. Okay. Just because you disagree with it does not mean that it's not true. Just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. Okay. Because some of this information may be outside the circumference of some people's awareness. All right. So share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay. All right. So first myth that I want to dealing with slavery is the myth that the majority of the captives during the transatlantic slave trade came to the United States of America. Okay, that's not true. The majority of them did not come to the United States of America. Depending upon the total number that you're looking at, only 4 to 6% came here. You're looking at, on the low end, 388,000, on the high end, 1.4 million. On the low end, 388,000. On the high end, 1.4 million came here. Okay, and even though I disagree with Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. on some things, I read a lot of his articles. He does do some good work. And you could read an article that he wrote dealing with how many Africans came to the, or how many Black people came to the U.S. during slavery. Okay, how many slaves came to America, fact versus fiction, okay, from the root.com. Okay, so he has a good article about that. Also, Dana Ramey Berry has an article dealing with this as well, dealing with myths about slavery. And she talks about it there also. Okay, but you're dealing with, on the low end, 388,000. On the high end, 1.4 million came here. Now, what's important for people to note, and what a lot of people don't understand, is that African people were already here in the land we call the United States of America. And we've been here for tens of thousands of years. Okay, African people were already here in the land we call the United States of America. And we've been here for tens of thousands of years. Okay, and this is why, you may have heard me talk about the problem with the slave movies, and talk about the TV show Underground and the Roots remake and things like this. And even though slavery is part of our history, when these movies are told and you have a slave TV show, it's to the detriment of the history of African people in this country going back tens of thousands of years. Okay, that information is not even talked about. Okay, and that's problematic. All right. So a lot of people are not familiar with Dr. David Imhotep. Okay. Dr. David Imhotep wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay. And this is one of the books we use in the online course. His book deals with tens of thousands of years of history. He deals with an African presence in this country we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years. And then also in South America, going back at least 56,000 years ago. The Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. They come from Southern Africa. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They're also known as the Khoi Khoi as well. And the Khoisan go all around the world. Okay. And they're here. They were here also. Okay. I'm going to pull this up for you here in just a minute. But Dr. Albert Goodyear made a shocking discovery back in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina. And this deals with an African presence found in Allendale County, South Carolina, that dates back at least 51,700 years ago. So oftentimes I hear people, because I do lectures, travel across the country, do radio. I was doing national radio up until April of this year, basically 5 days a week. And I hear people talk about 100 million Africans brought to this land in slavery. And no, that's not historically accurate at all. No. Now you may look at 100 million captured, taken out of Africa, and that includes those who die in the raids. That includes those who die on the way to the coastal area where the slave dungeons are. That includes those that die in the slave dungeons and on the slave ships. You may look at 100 million there. Okay. But keep in mind, the majority of them go to South America, specifically Brazil. Then they go on to Central America and also to the Caribbean, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, things like this. And they go into Central America like Panama, Honduras, etc. Okay. So we want to make sure we get that correct. The majority of enslaved Africans go to Brazil, followed by the Caribbean. A significant number of enslaved Africans arrived in the American colonies by way of the Caribbean, where they were seasoned and mentored into slave life. So when you look at Christopher Columbus is crucial to understanding the transatlantic slave trade. Okay. And when I teach my online course, we deal with the chronology of history. So we deal with ancient Kemet. We talk about Nubia, Ta-Nehisi, some. We deal with thousands of years of history, but we have to deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And this is where the way I approach the transatlantic slave trade is different than some other people, because you can't approach it episodically. You can't approach it as an episode in history. You have to approach it chronologically. Okay. And the 800-year occupation of Africa, of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, this is going to set up, this sets up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages. This sets up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages, right? And Columbus and his uncovering the so-called New World. He set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. This opens up the so-called New World to other European nations coming in and exploiting the so-called New World. And they're going to set up plantations. They're going to grow crops. They're going to set up sugarcane plantations, all different types of things like this. Okay, they're going to extract gold and wealth out of these lands and send this back to their respective European nations to rebuild these nations. Okay, so this is why it's important to understand a chronology of history. Now, Velton said we were here before Columbus. You're correct. We were here before Columbus went on his voyages. But one of the things that I talk about in one of these myths that we have to dispel is that when we look at where Columbus went on his 4 voyages, Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. He just didn't. So oftentimes when I hear people talking, I've even heard scholars talking about when Columbus came here. Where? Show me where in the contiguous United States. The contiguous United States are the 48 states that are connected. Alaska and Hawaii are not part of the 48 contiguous United States. Okay. They're not part of that landmass. All right. Show me where in the 48 contiguous states that Columbus came. He never came to this land. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. The closest Columbus came to this land, which is Cuba, it was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. Okay. So this is why when we deal with this type of information, we deal with it chronologically. Okay. And I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but since we brought up Christopher Columbus, I'll go ahead and show you this. Okay. Because these are things that we deal with in the online course. And these are some more myths. So instead of dispelling 5 myths about slavery, we may dispel 10 myths about slavery. Okay. So very quickly here, when we look at where Columbus went on his 4 voyages, right? When we look at where Columbus went on his 4 voyages, okay, first of all, he set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. All right. And he goes into the Bahamas, which he calls San Salvador. He goes into Cuba and Hispaniola. Okay. Hispaniola is later going to be called Haiti. All right. And we know about the Haitian Revolution against the French, 1791 to 1803. And Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines and Bouc-Medada, the Haitians, they're not just fighting against the French and Napoleon Bonaparte. They're also fighting against the British and the Spanish as well, who were allies. Okay. On his second voyage, September 1493, he goes to the West Indies. Okay. What we'll call the West Indies. And he goes into Boriquin, which today is called Puerto Rico, and he goes into Jamaica in 1494. Now, one of the things you're going to find is that these European nations are fighting one another, okay, over this new land because they're trying to rebuild themselves because they came out of the Dark Ages, okay? They took back control of the last stronghold in Spain, January 2nd, 1492, from the Africans known as the Moors, okay? So to take control of the last stronghold. And you're going to find that so what's going to happen is these same Europeans have been fighting one another for hundreds of years, descendants of these various groups of barbarians. Okay, whether you're talking about the Anglos, the Saxons, the Lombards, the Jutes, the Franks, the Picts, the Alans, Vandals, Visigoths, these Europeans have been fighting one another fighting and killing each other for hundreds of years. Okay, and then they're going to go from little kingdoms to countries. So when the Moors go in to the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD, okay, it wasn't Spain and Portugal. These weren't countries. They had little kingdoms. Okay. So what's going to happen is these Europeans who have been fighting each other for hundreds of years, they're going to continue fighting and killing one another over these new lands discovered. Okay. And you're going to have the Treaty of Tordesillas, June 7th, 1494, where the Pope at the time divides the non-Christian world between Spain and Portugal and sends them out to conquer the non-Christian world because they'd been fighting one another and killing one another. Well, when you look at Jamaica, it's originally uncovered by the Spanish in 1494, but Jamaica in 1655 is going to fall into the hands of the British. And this is going to then lead to the fight with Queen Nanny and the Queen Nanny of the Jamaican Maroons, right? And them fighting against the British and beating the British so badly, they forced the British into a peace treaty in 1739. So you're going to find that even though the Spanish may initially have these lands, you're going to find they fall into the hands of other countries also. Okay. All right. So let's continue here. And this is just some of the information we deal with in our online course. Also, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Hey, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Also, we're going to deal with a lot of information here in about an hour. We'll do about an hour here, hopefully. And also, in this evening, 8 p.m. To 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing a special overview of the first 3 sessions of our online course that we've done so far. So you can register for the full 12-hour, 6-week online course. We just posted the link here. It says register here. And then you'll be able to tune in tonight for the hour and a half overview I'm going to do of the past 3 sessions, and all these classes are recorded. You can go back and watch them over and over again, and we have 12 hours of bonus content also. The full course is only $40. We just posted the link there. It says register here. Okay, so this is why it's so important to understand a chronology of history. Okay, this is why it's so important to understand a chronology of history. You can't deal with the transatlantic slave trade episodically. And oftentimes I'll look at books or I'll see documentaries and they want to start in 1619, August 20th, or they want to start in 1500 or something like that. No, you have to deal with thousands of years of history leading up to this taking place. Okay. All right. So now they're going to have seasoning plantations, right, in the Caribbean. So some of those Africans who are going to be taken from Africa into the Caribbean, some are not going to stay there, but they're going to have seasoning plantations that train them and basically break them to be a slave. And then some of them are going to be brought to the land we call the United States of America. Okay, brought to South Carolina, brought to different states. Okay, first colonies, then states. All right. So they're going to spend months or years recovering from the harsh realities of the Middle Passage. Once they were forcibly accustomed to slavery, many were then brought to plantations on the American soil. Okay, so number two myth is that slavery lasted 400 years. And I often hear people talk about 400 years of slavery, 400 years of oppression, but they're not speaking in general of the transatlantic slave trade, which is basically from 1440 AD to 1888. The Brazil was the last one to end the slave trade in 1888. This was Brazil. Is going to begin right around 1440 with the Portuguese. The Portuguese were the first ones involved in the transatlantic slave trade, and then the Spanish are going to be right behind them. And the Portuguese are going to dominate for the first 200 years, from about 1440 to 1640. Okay, and then we know that the English are going to become really dominate the transatlantic slave trade also. Now, the Arabs were involved in the slave trade of African people about 1,000 years before Europeans got involved. This is the Arab slave trade of African people in East Africa. And estimates are somewhere between 30 to 50 million people taken out from 8th century AD to about 19th century AD. Okay. And Arabs had a sex slave trade of African women, African boys and girls. And they would oftentimes castrate the boys, make eunuchs out of them. Okay, if you read The Destruction of Black Civilization by Dr. Chancellor Williams, he deals with that Arab slave trade of African people in there also. But I was watching the episode of Good Times not too long ago, and it was an episode where JJ brought home, it was the end of the school year. He's going from 11th grade, hopefully to the 12th grade, and he brings home a report card with 1 A in art and the rest C's, and he's just being passed. He didn't earn the grades, but he said, remember, before he gave the report card to his parents, he said, remember, mama, I'm the victim of 400 years of oppression, right? So if we look at the start of the transatlantic slave trade, first in the British colonies. So we know we have 13 British colonies, and we know that this is going to lead to the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. And we just had the celebration of the 4th of July, right? July 4th, Dr. Shaka Musa Barashango, who wrote African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide. He called it the 4th of July because that's not our independence. And Colin Kaepernick, who was in Ghana for the 4th of July, because he traced his DNA ancestry back to Ghana. He went to Ghana to reconnect to his African roots. And he took his fiance, DJ Nisa Diab, with him. Okay. And Colin Kaepernick asked a question. He said, how can, African Americans celebrate independence on the day that robbed our ancestors of our independence? And he was absolutely correct. Okay. He was absolutely correct. Okay. Post your comments. We'll come to send your comments here on Facebook in a few minutes. Okay. All right. So when we look at the transatlantic slave trade in general, we're looking at 1440 to 1888. Okay. 400 years refers to the overall transatlantic slave trade, not here in the U.S. Here in the U.S., you're dealing with from 1619 in the British colonies, right? 1619 to 1865. So we know Civil War ends June 2nd, 1865. Civil Wars from April 12th, 1861 to June 2nd, 1865. You have the ratification of the 13th Amendment, December 6th, 1865. It's adopted December 18th, 1865. Okay. So you have from 1619 to 1865, that's 246 years. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we today call South Carolina in the 1520s. This is before the British colonies are founded, okay, starting with Jamestown, Virginia, which is 1607. The Spanish, who were the second ones involved in the transatlantic slave trade, were bringing Africans into the territory we today call South Carolina in the 1520s. So if you go beyond the British colonies and just look at this landmass called the United States of America and include the Spanish in South Carolina, then you're looking at about 346, 350 years. Still not 400, okay? The 400 is 400 plus is referring to the overall transatlantic slave trade, not specifically here to the U.S. But once again, it's important to understand that African people were here in the land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years ago, at least 51,700 years ago. Okay. We were here before Native Americans came into existence. So if we look at this information from Dr. David Imhotep and see, unfortunately, first of all, I have a lot of teachers, everybody from Dr. Leonard Jeffries to Professor Kabahai Walter Kamene, also known as Booker T. Coleman, formerly known as Booker T. Coleman, to Professor James Small. But Dr. David Imhotep is a friend of mine, and he's one of my teachers. But he'll tell you I'm one of his teachers also. And he said this during the last interview that I did with him. I've interviewed him 10 times. Okay, and why the picture of the book isn't coming up, I don't know. But he wrote the book, "The First Americans Were Africans: Documented Evidence." Okay, and here's the book here. So this is one of the ones we use in the course. Now, you don't have to buy any of these books to be able to follow along in the course, and the information I have for you is totally going to blow your mind. But this is good for your library in your home, because every African-American home has to have a library. Every African-American home has to have a library. Okay, it has to have an education center. We have entertainment centers. We have the flat screen TVs. We have the Wiis and the PlayStations and Xboxes. Some houses have all three. We have Blu-ray DVD players, and we have the DVD collection and all this stuff. But where are the history books? Where's the science books, the math books? Okay, you should have a bookshelf for the books for the children. Okay, and they have books with characters in there that look like them. Okay, where's your globe, your atlas, your thesaurus? Okay, your almanac. Dictionary. I have one of the dictionaries I use has about 400,000 words, and it's a huge collegiate dictionary. Then I have a huge thesaurus also. I also have a rhyming dictionary as well. And then there are etymological dictionaries that I use that are online. And I use Britannica, and I have a yearly subscription to Britannica.com because I use an online encyclopedia. Okay, not Wikipedia. No, Britannica.com. I got to pay them something like $50 a year, something like that. I forgot how much it is. I have a yearly subscription to Encyclopedia Britannica. Okay, so we have to have education centers in our home. Okay, we can complain about white supremacy and racism, and we should. But then the question is, what do we do about it? See, we can complain about white supremacy and racism, and we should. But then the question becomes, what do we do about it? See, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you have been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So one of the pieces of confusion that comes in with 400 years of slavery comes from the Bible, comes from the Helios Biblos. Study the etymology of holy, which takes you to Helios, which means sun, because Helios Biblos literally means the sun book, Because when you ask now, okay, what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. What I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before, disagree with it, or don't like it does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So when you understand that 80% of the Bible is told in allegory, parables, hyperbole, and metaphor, okay, and these are all literary writing terms. This is why it's called religious literature. And you understand that world history is in world history books like this, and religious literature is in religious literature books. And you have to make a clear distinction what you're talking about, right? When you understand that, we can come out of a lot of this confusion. So really, when you understand that you're dealing with in the Helios Biblos, the Sun Book or the Holy Bible, S-U-N, not S-O-N, S-U-N, you're dealing with a retelling oftentimes of stories that come from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, come from Mesopotamia, things like this, told over and over again, adapted to various people's cultures. But these are stories that actually deal with the travels of the sun throughout the 12 constellations. And they're told in allegorical form. An allegory is basically to say otherwise. An allegory is similar to parables, okay? Coming from allegoryein, basically to say otherwise, okay? You're dealing with stories, mythology. This may be outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Does not mean it's not true. It means you have to understand, you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. Study the etymology of the word holy, as in Holy Bible. It's going to take you back to Helios, H-E-L-I-O-S, which means sun. And when you study the etymology of the word Bible, B-I-B-L-E, it's going to take you back to Bublos. You'll see maybe a couple of different spellings for it. B-U-B-L-O-S, B-U-B-L-O-S. And the early Christians, when they practice their religion or spiritual system early on, they're going to practice in the temples of the Amen priest and priestesshood in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. And there were, in these temples, there were stories carved on the wall, and they're going to write down these stories, copy these stories down. And then when it comes time to put these into a book, they go to a Phoenician city named Bublos to get the papyrus to write the book. And the papyrus is an early form of paper, papyrus. And it's believed that the word paper is derived from papyrus. So they name the book after where they got the paper from to write the book in the first place, Bublos. You'll see, and when you look at the derivation of Bible, it takes you back to Bublos, and it tells you that this was an ancient Phoenician city that produced papyrus. This tells you this was an ancient Phoenician city that produced papyrus, okay? And then what they're going to do at the end of their prayers, they're going to put the word Amen, which comes from the Amen Ra, the Amen priesthood, Amun. It's all the same thing, okay? In honor of the order, the Amen priest and priestesshood that let them practice their religion, the spiritual system in these temples. So at the end of their prayers, they put Amen at the end of their prayers. So a lot of people don't know. So a lot of people in church every Sunday, and I'm not attacking them, every Sunday, and they say Amen. A lot of times they say things, don't know why they say it. They say Amen. They don't know that takes you back to ancient Kemet. Even though many of us have been taught in organized religion that Egypt was heathenous and pagan and to run away from Egypt. A lot of that comes from the story of Pharaoh and Moses. They don't tell you which Pharaoh usually. Originally in the story, they didn't tell you which Pharaoh. Pharaoh is an Asian term. Pharaoh is not even a term that we use. Nesubiti would be the correct term. Nesubiti would be the correct term. Okay, that's not even a term that we use. So this is why, we have, see, right now, knowledge corrects wrong behavior. Okay, right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. So this is why we have to separate the fact from the fiction. And this is why I say proper documentation ends all conversation. Okay. Proper documentation ends all conversation. All right. And also look up biblio as well. Look up the word biblio also. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to divert a little bit. I'm going to show you something. How's everybody doing? Okay. How you like this type of information? How's everybody doing? Who wants to register for the online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school? It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. We deal with some information like this and a whole lot more. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And what we're doing, we're dispelling some myths about slavery, 5 myths about slavery, but we probably do about 10. And we're going to do an overview of the online course. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a special session tonight from I'm going to do a special session tonight from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And what we'll do is a review of the past 3 weeks. Okay, so if the day is the first time you register for the class, you could tune in 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. today. We'll do a review of the past 3 weeks, and then all of our sessions are recorded. So number one, we have about 12 hours of bonus content you can watch. And then number two, you can watch the first 3 sessions also. So John said, great info. Shati said, great knowledge. Sending positive energy, Olympia. Okay. All right. So we just posted a link again. It says register here. I think we just posted that. Okay. So it's register here. And what I'm going to do, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page, invite your friends to tune in. We're going to post the link here again, and I'll pin it so it doesn't keep moving. Okay, I'll pin it here so it doesn't keep moving. There we go. Should. Okay, it says register here. Okay, so you can register for the online class, and you can tune in for the session I'm doing tonight, 8 o'clock, which is a review of the first 3 weeks. Okay, so this is what I want to do. I want to show you. This is an etymological dictionary that I use. Okay, and I ain't planning to show you this, but I'm going to show you to you anyway. So I just brought this up. Let's see here. Screen share. All right. Because I am using a technology called Crowdcast. I'm using a service called Crowdcast that allows me to broadcast through Facebook, but it gives me the capability to show you PowerPoint presentations, because we do a PowerPoint presentation for the class and show you websites, things like this. You can't do this just broadcasting straight to Facebook. Okay, so here's an online etymological dictionary that I use, right? This is one of them. It's called Online Etymology Dictionary. Online Etymology Dictionary. So when we look at the word Bible, right, takes you to biblio. And let me try to get to this quickly. Okay. The Latin word is from the Greek one, biblion, paper scroll, also the ordinary word for a book as a division of a larger. Okay. Let's scroll down. Biblia, Gideon. Okay. Let's go to this here. Biblio. Okay. Word forming element, meaning book or sometimes Bible, from Greek biblion, paper scroll, also the ordinary word for a book as a division of a larger work, originally a diminutive of biblos, B-Y-B-L-O-S, biblos, Egyptian papyrus. Okay, so the word biblio originally comes from biblos, B-Y-B-L-O-S, which was Egyptian papyrus. This is perhaps from Byblos with a capital B, B-Y-B-L-O-S, the Phoenician port from which Egyptian papyrus was exported to Greece, modern Jabil in Lebanon, for sense evolution, compare parchment. Or the place name might be from the Greek word, which then would be probably of Egyptian origin. Okay. And then if you look up B-U-B-L-O-S, In my dictionary, I think it shows that I have a Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary. Okay, but let me try to take a look at this right quick, and let's look at Bublos. Does Bublos come up here? Okay, Bublos doesn't come up here. Is it Biblos? Let's look at Biblos. I think it's in my dictionary. I have to look at that. Arabic Jabal. Okay. But you can research that and look up Bublos also. Okay. Check that out also. All right. Okay, so all right, Juliana on Facebook said, I love and appreciate the history you're sharing among us, but I feel it's not just for African Americans. And I put it in quotations for the simple fact that there are many people of the Black race. Okay. Well, not just for African Americans, all African people. We reach people around the world. Okay, so let's continue here. How's everybody doing today? All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so once again, this is Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Now, on page 14 of his book, right, he deals with a discovery that came out of Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear. All right. And this goes into what I was saying about an African presence here in this land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years ago. All right. Here's what they found. This was in 2004. Most people don't even know about this discovery. And archaeological discoveries happen all the time. OK, we had a big one that took place. We had a big one that was revealed in June. Okay, about Homo sapien skeletons found in Morocco that date back between 300,000 and 350,000 years ago, which are the oldest skeletons of modern man they have found. It predates the skeletons they found in Ethiopia of modern man, Homo sapiens, that date back 195,000 years ago. Totally blows that out the water. And when these new discoveries happen, they keep having to push dates back. Okay. So the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. But on page 14 of his book, he deals with the discovery made at Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004. They found artifacts, architectures, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines thoroughly documented an African presence here in this land that we call the United States of America. This is tens of thousands of years before Native Americans come into existence, because you're going to have Asians who come here around 3000 BC, and the Africans and Asians intermix, and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. If you look at old black and white photographs of Native Americans, okay, and this book here is Chronology of Native Americans, the ultimate guide to North America's indigenous people, right? If you look at old black and white photographs of Native Americans, these were not the real light-skinned, almost white-looking Native Americans. No, these were a dark-skinned people, oftentimes with high cheekbones. These were dark-skinned people. The other thing that's going to happen is that when European settlers come here, a lot of these indigenous African groups are going to be reclassified as Native Americans or quote unquote Black Indians. So Captain John Smith in 1607, Jamestown, Virginia, Captain John Smith said he was captured by a group of Black Indians. Okay. Now, this is Dr. Albert Goodyear. He's an archaeologist from the University of South Carolina. He's the one that made the discovery in 2004 that Dr. David Imhotep talks about in his book that we just talked about. All right. So there, you can read this article from ScienceDaily.com. It's called New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Okay. So his discovery totally flipped the archaeological world upside down. And there has been a concerted effort to suppress his information because it doesn't fall in line with the narrative that modern archaeology and anthropology try to tell, which really comes out of white supremacy. Okay. So when you come up with evidence of an African presence here before Native Americans, this contradicts the narrative that they try to tell. So they try to suppress that information. So here's a synopsis of the article. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. And this is something Dr. David Imhotep has been saying also. Before the last ice age, there were already African people here in this land we call the United States of America. Okay, before the last ice age. So when we look at, this is why we have to deal with a chronology of history. And even though the transatlantic slave trade happened, even though August 20th, 1619 happened, there were African people who were already here in this land we call the United States of America. You had pyramid mounds built up and down the Mississippi River. You had a presence from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt here as well. And there were more African people who were already here than those who were brought here during the transatlantic slave trade. There were more African people who were already here than those who were brought here during the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so very quickly here, I ain't planning to share this with you, but very quickly, if we look at page 65 of the First Americans Were Africans Documented Evidence, we look at page 65. He talks about Captain John Smith and Black Indians. Captain John Smith and Black Indians. He says in 1607, the Englishman, Captain John Smith, built the first permanent Caucasian settlement in North America in Jamestown, Virginia. While building the settlement, Captain John Smith made contact with the Powhatan tribe, Powhatan, the Powhatan tribe, the Powhatan tribe. The Powhatans were part of the Algonquian speakers, who were the largest group of Indians in Virginia as late as the time Captain John Smith arrived. So the Algonquins were African people also, the Algonquins. There were more than 10,000 Algonquian in Virginia alone before the colonists arrived. Okay, so Europeans called the Delaware Indians Redskins because of their reddish natural complexion and the vermilion makeup they were fond of and decorated their bodies. Therefore, they were unfortunately called Redskins and sometimes called Red Devils by the European settlers, also referring to their skin tone. In 1607, Captain John Smith described the chief of the Powhatans by writing, quote, Powhatan, more like a devil than a man, with some 200 more as black as himself, more, M-O-R-E, okay, in addition to more, with some 200 more as black as himself. When Captain John Smith described the chief of the Powhatans, indirectly saying that his braves were as black as he was, it is logical to assume that he was also black. When Captain John Smith described the Powhatans as devils and black, he was referring to skin tone. Clyde Winters, who's a historian and author, Clyde Winters agrees, saying early Americans would certainly be able to tell the difference between paint and complexion, In any case, whether the Powhatans were black at the late date or not does not change the fact that the first Americans were Africans. These first Americans remained black complexion until 3000 BC, when the first Asians entered and began to mix blood with the Proto-American Africans. It's a deep book right here. All right. That's one of the ones we use in the class. Okay. All right. So let's continue here. All right. So Dispelling Myths about slavery. How's everybody doing? You're tuning in. Also, people watching us at work. Don't get in trouble watching us at work. Okay. Make you want to cuss out somebody. Yeah, I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. We're dealing with 5 myths about slavery, but we're dispelling about 10 of them here. All right. And then also we're doing an overview of an online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with some of this information. This is just a tip of the iceberg of what we actually deal with in the online course. It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. And then there's about 12 hours of bonus content. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch them over and over again. We do it live on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This evening, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., I'm going to do an overview of the first 3 classes. So when you register, you'll be able to watch the overview. Full class is only $40. We posted a link again. You can register right there. Okay, so when we talked about the Helios Biblos in the Bible a few minutes ago, right? And there's confusion about 400 years, partly because of the Bible. And now what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness once again, okay? Just because you never heard it before does not mean it's not true. This means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, it says, then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years, your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. Okay. So a lot of people hear that and think it's talking about 400 years in America. Okay. It is not. No, it's not 400 years of slavery in America. Other thing I would talk about is where in the biblical text does it reference North America? Where in the biblical text does it reference North America? And well, I ain't gonna get into that. Okay, because I could ask the question where if never mind. I could I don't go down that road. All right. I could ask the question. If you look at where Jesus went, Jesus never came to North America. And he talked about returning to his people. If his people were not here in North America, then if he comes back, what makes you think he's coming back here? I could ask that question, but I ain't gonna go down that road. All right. Maybe something outside the circumference of your own awareness. Okay. It may be something outside. I don't mean any harm to anybody, but we have to think and we have to study history. Okay. See, there's a difference between religion and spiritual systems. Spiritual systems teach you how to think. Religion tells you what to think. And this gets back to what I was talking about the difference between world history and religious literature. Because nowhere in religious literature, when you study the Holy Bible, the Helios Biblos, nowhere in the biblical text does it talk about the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the First Council of Constantinople 381, the First Council of the Council of Ephesus in 431, Council of Chalcedon in 451, Council of Trent from 1545 to 1563. There were 21 ecumenical councils that are historical events that took place from 325 AD to about 1870 that influence the way people celebrate and practice Christianity today, influence what they believe, what's taught, what was put into the Bible, what was taken out of the Bible. So world history is what happened. Religious literature is the result of what happened. World history are the actual events that happen. Religious literature is the result of those events that happen and the shaping of what is going to be taught and what is going to be believed. And when you can control the circumference of people's awareness, you can ultimately have control over their feelings, actions, and behaviors and results. When you can control the circumference of people's awareness and you can control what they believe, how they worship, what day they worship on, you can change the Sabbath from a Saturday to a Sunday, which Constantine did in 321 AD, if I remember correctly, because he converts to Christianity around 312 AD. And he changes the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday, if I remember correctly, in 321 AD. Council of Nicaea is in 325. He did not convene the Council of Nicaea. It was the Pope that convened it. Okay, he wanted it to happen, but he didn't have the power to convene it. So read Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams, because Dr. Walter Williams goes deep into it. And what most people don't know is that the real fight at the Council of Nicaea was not over Jesus the Christ. First of all, now, when I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness, okay, and in the class, we have to deal with a history of religion, because religion impacts us and religion plays a major part in the transatlantic slave trade. Because one of the reasons for dehumanizing African people was because Europeans said that they're savages and they're heathens and they're non-Christians and they have no souls. So you have to understand that Europeans are going to take fragments from the periphery of traditional African spiritual systems, especially those coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, to form Christianity. And then they're going to dehumanize these African people who they say are non-Christian, but they don't understand that the concept of the virgin birth and the immaculate conception and the adoration and the annunciation, that comes from ancient Kemet, that comes from ancient Egypt, which goes back to at least 3300 BC in ancient Nubia or Ta-Nehisi. So this is why you have to understand the chronology of history. So this is why we have to dispel all these myths, because having this misinformation impacts the way we think, feel, act, and behave, ultimately controls the circumference of our awareness, which ultimately controls our results. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. And when you have bad information, you make bad decisions. When you have bad information, you make bad decisions. Well, traditionally speaking, Justin, African people did not have religion. Retrospectively, we refer to that as religion. Those are spiritual systems. Traditionally speaking, African people did not have religion. We had spiritual systems. Okay, so Genesis 15:13 said, then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in the country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. Okay. So people confuse the 400 years as well. And wherever they're talking about going, African people were already there also. Okay, so just adds to more confusion. Once again, do not look to the Bible for world history. You will be confused. Do not, I'm telling you, you can do what you want to do. I've been studying history for 25 years. Do not look to the Bible for world history. Don't look to religious literature, period, for world history. World histories and world history books. That's where you have to look. Okay, so one of the best known of okay, so they talk about Africans coming here. Juan Garrido, 1513 in Florida with the Spanish conquistadors. Juan de Paliance, I think it was, he came here with. Juan Garrido is the first African that we know of by name who came to this land, but he wasn't the first African. Okay, Juan Garrido. He was from West Africa originally. He was a conquistador, Spanish conquistador. So another myth is that all Southerners own slaves. Well, most Southerners own slaves, and that's just not true. All Southerners did not own slaves, and most Southerners did not know slaves. Okay, Sebastian said, wow, the Bible is the most accurate book. Okay, interesting. All right, accurate as far as what? Okay, so So roughly 25% of all Southerners own slaves. Roughly 25% of all Southerners own slaves. You may see it fluctuate a little bit from state to state. One point, Texas is going to be probably about 27%. One point, Texas, I think another state, 32%. But in general, roughly about 25% of all Southerners own slaves. Okay, but what's going to, so if we look at the example of Texas, say in 1860, the Texas enslaved population was 182,566 in 1860. Now, this is on the verge of the Civil War, okay? So November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln is elected president of the United States, November 6, 1860. And the Civil War is going to start, first, December 20th, 1860, the South Carolina succeeds from the Union. So they're the first state to secede from the Union. By February 1st of 1861, you're going to have 6 other states that succeed as well. And they're going to form the Confederate States of America. You're going to have the Civil War start April 12th, 1861, with the attack on Fort Sumter in South Carolina. So by 1860, Texas, the enslaved population of Texas was 182,566. But slaveholders represented 27% of the population in Texas and controlled 68% of the government positions and 73% of the wealth. Okay. Now, if we look at another myth, that slavery was a long time ago, right? So you oftentimes, when you hear African Americans talk about the conditions we're in right now, and we deal with history, and this is a document that people should download. This is from the Congressional Black Caucus. It's called We Have a Lot to Lose. We Have a Lot to Lose. It's free to download. Go to cbc.house.gov, cbc.house.gov. We Have a Lot to Lose. Solutions to advance Black families in the 21st century. Solutions to advance Black families in the 21st century. So I downloaded it, and then I took it to the printer and got it printed up. Okay, We Have a Lot to Lose, and it's a very, very deep book. Okay, it's a very, very deep document. This is the 130-page agenda that the Congressional Black Caucus presented to Donald Trump March 22nd, 2017, when they met with Trump. And what they do is, the first thing they do in here is lay out some history of African Americans so we can understand how we got into this predicament that we're in now, the condition that we're in now. So the first thing they do, they lay out some history, African American history. Okay. And one of the things that they say in here, and I'm glad they did. So they deal with slavery, Reconstruction, the Great Migration, the Great Depression, the New Deal. After the Great Depression starts, the New Deal, President Roosevelt, World War II, Jim Crow, civil rights. They take you throughout history. One of the things they say in here is that in addition, they're talking about slavery. Both Black men and women were beaten and whipped into submission. Finally, slave patrols and night watchers, precursors to modern day police departments, were established to control slaves. Okay. And so then what they do is they break it out and they deal with different issues pertaining to the African American community. They lay out problems, and then they lay out solutions, and they have 50 pieces of legislation that address the conditions that we're dealing with. So they deal with voting rights, criminal justice reform, economic justice, education, workforce, healthcare, environmental justice, rural America, because a large percentage of African Americans live in rural America now. We all don't live in the inner city, contrary to what Donald Trump believes. We all don't live in the inner city. A large number of us live in suburbs as well as rural America. Okay. So download this from cbc.house.gov, cbc.house.gov. Okay. It's called We Have a Lot to Lose, and it's free to download. All right. And the great thing about this is that there are elements in here that every African American organization, okay, whether you are a block club, or whether you are a Black Lives Matter chapter, whether you are NAACP chapter, a Black Parents Association, whatever African American organization you are, there are elements in here that you can adopt to add to your platform, okay, to create a very, very powerful platform for your organization to push your agenda on a local level, a state level, and national level if it so fits, okay? But see, what we have to understand with an agenda like this, and there may be things that you want to add to it. You may feel, well, it's not complete. It needs this, it needs that. That's fine. You can season it. That's fine, okay? But what's important for us to understand is that an agenda can't be something that comes down from the Congressional Black Caucus down to us and we just wait for them to go and fight these battles. No, that agenda has to be adopted by grassroots organizations. It could be modified based upon your specific needs in your specific communities. That's fine. But it's something that goes from the grassroots up. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of us miss. It's something that goes from the grassroots up, not from the top down. Okay, I'm trying to make sure we're still broadcasting here on Facebook here. I'm trying to monitor here on my phone. Looks like we're still here. Okay. No, I'm not deflecting off the topic. I'm right on topic, Cheryl. I have a lot of information to cover. I'm right on topic. Okay, so we deal with roughly 25% of all Southerners own enslaved African people, but it's heavily going to benefit the South. Crops created, industries financed. You're going to have over 40 insurance companies. You're going to have over 40 insurance companies that take out insurance policies on enslaved African people on the plantations. This is something a lot of people don't know. When you look at the New York Life Insurance Company, starts out as the Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance Company in 1845 in Manhattan. First 3 years, they take out about 508 insurance policies on enslaved African people on the plantations, because what they did is that there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. At least 262 skills, trades, and crafts. Okay. So oftentimes the story is told that all we did was pick cotton and cook the food for the master and took care of the master's children and things like this. No. We were shipbuilders, anchor makers, barrel makers, bartenders, barbers, blacksmiths, coppersmiths. We tended to the animals. We breeded animals, took care of the animals, planted crops. In some cases, taught Europeans how to plant crops. We worked with different types of metals, all different types of things like this. Okay. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. Okay. We were working in sawmills. We were working on steam engines. We were working in coal mines, which is very dangerous work. And oftentimes what would happen is that the slave master would take out an insurance policy on one of his slaves that did very dangerous work. So if that slave died prematurely, he could cash in that insurance policy and collect 3/4 of what he had invested in that slave and go buy another one. Okay. You have over 40 insurance companies in this country who took out insurance policies on enslaved African people on the plantations. Okay. So Tendaji said, then came unions. Now, the unions are largely going to come after slavery ends, right after slavery ends. So 1866, you have the National Labor Union created, right? You're going to have a lot of these labor unions that are going to be created right after slavery ends, because now we can compete for jobs and we can compete for wages. We have been doing these jobs for hundreds of years for free. Okay, now we can compete for wages. Now they create these labor unions that are for white men. And these labor unions have contracts with different industries that say you can only hire white men who belong to these labor unions. to lock us out of these jobs that we have been doing for free for 246 years. Okay. This is why you should get this book. This is one of the books we use in the course also. You don't, now to follow along in the course to learn, you have to buy any of these books once again, but this is good for your library. Okay. How White Folks Got So Rich. How White Folks Got So Rich. The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. How White Folks Got So Rich. The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. This book is only $8. When I got, this is the second edition. This is from the Nation of Islam Research Group, NOI.org, second edition. Also get Black Labor White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. Black Labor White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson as well. Okay. All right. So how's everybody doing today? How you like this type of information? How you all like this type of information? Okay. All right. Who needs me to post a link again so you can register for our online class? So we're going to do a special session tonight around 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. We'll do a review of the past 3 classes, and we'll do and then all our sessions are recorded. So as soon as you register, you can watch the first 3 classes. The classes normally meet on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can tune in from around the world. All the sessions are recorded. And tonight, 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., we're going to do a review of the first 3 classes. So if you're just registering for the class, you can tune in tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Kylie said good stuff. Patricia said love it. Have a lot of information. Love it. You have a lot of information. Aretha said great information. D, very informative. Okay. We just posted. Did I post the link again? We just posted a link again right here, so you can register for the class. The full course is only $40. I forgot to tell you, I'm sorry. Full course is only $40, and there's about 12 hours of bonus content there for you also. So you have a lot of people who say, well, slavery was a long time ago. When Juneteenth comes around, African American History Month comes around, and we talk about the impact on African people of the past 246 years of slavery. We talk about the theft of 2.3 billion acres of land from indigenous African people and Native Americans. So you have people who try to brush it off and say, oh, well, you have equality now, and Dr. King came along, you have a Civil Rights Act and a Voting Rights Act, and everything's equal now. Well, no, you have to understand that you had a maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. And it's your wealth and power that really control your quality of life. Okay. And that maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources has never been corrected. So African Americans have been technically free in this country for less than the time that we were enslaved for 246 years. Yes, there were free African people here who were part of indigenous nations. That's true. And so we've been free for 152 years. Okay. Technically, which means that most Americans are only 2 or 3 generations away from slavery. Most Americans are only 2 or 3 generations away from slavery. Over the same period of time, however, former slaveholding families have built their legacies on the institution of slavery and generated wealth that African Americans have not had access to because enslaved labor was forced. Segregation maintained wealth disparities, and overt and covert discrimination limited African American recovery efforts. Okay, and if you read, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. Also at finalcall.com, they have the article at finalcall.com. They have a series, a 4-part series called Hard Work or Hardly Working, How White Folks Got So Rich, Hard Work or Hardly Working, How White Folks Got So Rich. Okay. And that's at finalcall.com. We'll post the link here for one of those. That is a overview of this book. Okay. Hard Work or Hardly Working, How White Folks Got So Rich. That's an overview of this book. Let me post a link here for it. You can check that out. Okay. All right. So we're going to continue for a few more minutes here. Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Hope everybody's doing well. All right. Let's see. I want to get to one more myth here. We'll get to one more myth here. And this picture here that I had up, let's go back to, okay, this picture here that I had up of the King Memorial, okay, in Washington, D.C. And you see the Washington Monument behind it, okay? Washington Monument is an ancient African symbol called a tekken, T-E-K-H-E-N, a tekken. The Greeks called it an obelisk. This comes from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru. Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Okay. And they were known as the first Holy Trinity, the first story of a immaculate conception, virgin birth, adoration, annunciation. That comes from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru. That story goes back to and you get the white Isis from this DC Comics. The white Isis is a copy of an African woman, okay, who in the mythology was the first queen of Egypt. And you see her with the son Heru, who the Greeks called Horus, who was born on December 25th of a virgin birth. And then from Aset and Heru, you get the Black Madonna and Child, okay, that was worshipped all throughout Europe. The Black Madonna and Child was worshipped all throughout Europe. In Europe, for hundreds of years, they worshiped the African woman. Okay, and then what's going to happen is with Europeans coming out of the Dark Ages, starting to rebuild their respective European countries, conquering other people's lands, people of color, extracting their wealth, building up Europe. You're going to have a rise in white supremacy. You're going to have a rise in the European phenotype. You're going to have a rise in white supremacy. You have a rise in the European phenotype. And then you're going to have this decolorized version. You're going to have this decolorized version, okay, of Mary in first Jesus coming from Yeshua, okay. The reason why is because the letter J did not exist until 1630 AD. I know this may be shocking for some people, okay, but the letter J did not exist till 1630 AD. The letter J is derived from the letter I. Okay, the letter J is derived from the letter I. If you read The Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams, The Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams, okay? And Dr. Walter Williams is one of my teachers. I've interviewed him a number of times. If you visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you can listen to the interviews I've done there, okay? So I'm a talk show host. You can probably tell. We have 750 podcasted episodes of my radio shows there. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have 750 podcasted episodes of my radio shows there. Okay. And you can listen to the interviews I've done with Dr. Walter Williams, who wrote the book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. Okay. Historical Origin of Christianity. And he deals with Chapter 9 of his book deals with the whole history of the letter J. Chapter 9 of his book deals with the whole history of the letter J. So the letter J is derived from the letter I. Okay, the letter J is derived from the letter I, and the letter J is a I with a hook on it. It's not by accident that in your 26-character alphabet, the letter J comes after the letter I. That's not by accident. Okay. So when you look at if you go to the dictionary and look up the word Jesus, it takes you back to Yeshua, which is Amharic. And Amharic is the ancient language of the Ethiopians, okay, or Abyssinians. Okay, so when you look at the King James Version of the Bible, which comes out in 1611 AD, commissioned in 1600, his name in that book was Iesus with an I, Iesus. Wasn't Jesus originally because the letter J didn't exist. Okay. So originally in the story, his mama didn't call him Jesus because the letter J didn't exist. All right. That is, I probably should have said it before I stated that. This may be something outside the circumference of your own awareness. Just because you never heard it before, disagree with it, or don't like it, does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. Okay. So very quickly here, and let's see how we do this. Let me show you this etymological dictionary once again, very quickly here. Let me blow this up. This is from Online Etymology Dictionary, ETY, etymon, let's say etymonline.com, etymonline.com. Okay, let's take a quick look at this, and then we'll wrap up. So if you look up the word Jesus, it says personal name of the Christian Savior, late 12th century. It is the Greek form of Joshua, used variously in translations in the Bible, from late Latin Iesus, I-E-S-U-S, Iesus, okay, from the Greek, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, I-E-S-O-U-S, Iesos, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, I-E-S-O-U-S, which is an attempt to render into Greek the Aramaic Semitic proper name with a J, but Hebrew Yeshua. Okay, they say Aramaic. I think it's actually Amharic, but anyway, Yeshua. Okay, Hebrew Yeshua. Okay, and they translate it as Yah is salvation. This was a common Jewish personal name, or Hebrew, during the Hellenizing period. It is the latter form of Hebrew Yahshua. Okay, but this is before the J exists. Okay, but it goes back to Yeshua. Okay, to the Hebrew Yeshua, and then also you're going to find that in Amharic or Aramaic. Okay, I really think it's Amharic. All right, so you can take a look at that also. All right, and I just for record, Jesus. Okay, all right, so check that out. Etymological dictionary as well. Okay. All right, let's do one last myth here, because there are a lot of other myths. Okay, Hotep Carey, how you doing? Vivian, how you doing? Anthony Browder, discourse of disservice to the letter J. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Yeah, I know Tony. Tony Browder. Tony's the man. Thanks, Ty Campbell. Ty, thanks. Tony's the man. I've interviewed Tony. Tony's brilliant, man. We use a couple of his books in the course here. Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, as well as Egypt on the Potomac. Okay, so let's deal with one last myth. A couple years ago, when you had the killing of the 9 African Americans at the Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, June of 2015, right? And then you had a debate over the Confederate battle flag, okay? The Confederate battle flag, okay? We may do 2 myths then, okay? We're about to dispel 2 myths, all right? So the Confederate battle flag was on the state's capital in South Carolina. And you had people saying, oh, my great granddaddy fought for this flag. And they were saying, oh, don't take down the Confederate flag, all this stuff, right? Okay, first of all, that is not the Confederate flag. That's not the Confederate flag. That is the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's command. That's not the Confederate flag, number one, okay? There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. That flag was not one of them. The one that Donald Trump supporters are out here waving. Just this weekend, you had the Ku Klux Klan. They had a rally protesting the removing of Confederate statues, right? And they're out there with this flag, and they have belt buckles, and you saw it on the top of the General Lee car, on General Lee, on the Dukes of Hazzard. Okay. Now on the Dukes of Hazzard, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I don't remember on the Dukes of Hazzard them presenting it in a way that was coming out of white supremacy or racism, anything like that. I don't remember that. But a lot of Donald Trump supporters, they present it like that. And some people say, oh, this is part of our Southern heritage. I've heard some white people say, look, when they were trying to get it taken down in South Carolina, I saw a rally that took place, and I saw one white guy holding the Confederate battle flag, and he was talking to an African-American man. And he said, look, he said, when I fly this flag, he said, I don't hate you or anything like this. He said, this is part of our Southern heritage. Okay. Now, what happens is that most white people don't know that at the end of the Civil War, General Robert E. Lee said that flag needs to be folded up and put away and not brought back out. Okay. Number one. Number two, that flag never flew over the Confederate States of America. They think it's the Confederate flag. No, it's not. It's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia. So if you look at this article from CNN.com, and I have other articles dealing with this history also. Confederate battle flag separating the myths from facts. This is from June 24, 2015, when the debate ensued, right? Okay. So it's not the original Confederate flag. There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865, because this is how long the Confederacy lasts, from 1861 to 1865. There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America. Okay. That flag was never one of them. That flag that Donald Trump supporters are waving, and some of them telling African Americans to go back to Africa, even though we were here before Europeans came into existence, and we were here before Native Americans were here, things like this. This flag never flew over the Confederate States of America. Okay, so very quickly. So the original flag that flew over the Confederate States of America was referred to as stars and bars, and this is what it looked like. And it flew from 1861. It was used from 1861 to 1863. Okay. And what happened was with this one here, this looked very similar to the U.S. flag of the Union. And we know the South seceded from the Union February of 1861. Okay. The South seceded from the Union February 1861. Let me blow this up a little bit so you can see this. Okay. All right. So the first flag was stars and bars, approved in 1861. Like its Union sibling, it had a dark blue field in the upper left corner, or the canton. Okay, upper left corner, also called the canton, and only 3 stripes, 2 red and 1 white. It has 7 stars to represent the breakaway states of South Carolina. So South Carolina is the first state to succeed from the Union, and they succeed December 20th, 1860. December 20th, 1860. Okay. So South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. And the white stars formed a circle, much like the original Betsy Ross American flag. Okay. Now, then you're going to have, okay, so the original Confederate flag's similarity to the Union flag quickly confused soldiers who often couldn't tell the difference between the 2 flags on the battlefield. Okay, so if you're on the battlefield and there's smoke on the battlefield and there's bullets flying around and people dropping dead, the flags look similar, so you don't know which side to go to. So they said, oh, we got to change this. Okay, so they changed it, and then they come up with this flag here. Okay, all right, so the original Confederate flag similarity to the Union flag quickly confused soldiers on the battlefield. So Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard wanted something that looked distinctly different. So politician William Porcher Miles came up with the design we know today, the battle flag, a blue St. Andrew's cross with white stars on the red field. Okay, on a red field. Now, the canton, that actual flag right there, take away the white, that's the Confederate battle flag. So that's the flag we see in the original TV series, the Dukes of Hazzard. That's the flag you see on top of the Dukes of Hazzard car. That's the flag you see Donald Trump supporters waving. And this past weekend, when you had protests over Confederate statues being taken down, the Ku Klux Klan out protesting, this is the flag that they're flying. Okay, the Canton part. All right, without the white portion there. Okay, so this was the second flag that flew over the Confederate States of America. The second flag that flew over the Confederate States of America. Okay. Now, this flag caused a problem also. All right. So the Confederacy took the battle flag design and put it on the canton of its next flag, a white one. This was called the stainless banner. Okay. This was called the stainless banner. All right. And this was used from 1863 to 1865. All right. But there was a problem. Okay. So if you're on the battlefield, right? When you're on the battlefield and the wind is not blowing, when you're on the battlefield and the wind is not blowing, this flag is hanging down. Well, if you're in war and you have a white flag, that means you surrender. So that caused a problem. Okay. So they had to fix it. So then they come up with another flag. Okay. They come up with another flag. So the third incarnation of the Confederate flag was a red vertical stripe was added to the end of the flag, okay, on the far end, and this flag was called bloodstained banner. So you go from stainless banner to bloodstained banner. So this way, if the wind is not blowing on the battlefield and the flag is hanging straight down, you can still see that the red on the flag, and you know that is not a sign of surrendering. Okay, so these were the three flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. So the Confederate battle flag that people think is the Confederate flag that they think their great granddaddy fought for and all this stuff, most likely they didn't. It's the battle flag of Robert E. Lee's army. While it wasn't the Confederate States official flag, the battle flag was flown by several Confederate Army units. The most notable among them was General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. And even Lee distanced himself from the divisive symbols of a civil war that his side lost. Okay. He said, he wrote, "I think it's wiser, moreover, not to keep open the sores of war." He wrote in a letter declining an invitation by the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association. There were no flags flown at his funeral, Confederate or otherwise. Okay. So that's some history. Okay. So, okay, we're about to dispel another myth here too. All right. Hold on. We're about to dispel another myth as well. All right. So here's what happened. How did this resurge? How did you have a resurgence in this flag? Okay. So what happened was 1948, Strom Thurmond runs for president as a Dixiecrat. Okay. So originally the Democrats were the party of the plantation owners, the slave owners, the aristocracy, things like this. And the Democrats were obstructions. Okay. So what's going to happen is, blow this up some. Okay. So what's going to happen is the first burst may have been in 1948. South Carolina politician Strom Thurmond, white supremacist, racist, segregationist, ran for president under the newly founded States' Rights Democratic Party, also known as the Dixiecrats. Okay, the States' Rights Democratic Party, also known as the Dixiecrats. The party's purpose was clear. We stand for segregation of the races. This is what was stated in Article 4 of their platform. We stand for the segregation of the races. So these were straight out white supremacists. Okay, and okay, so they bring back this flag, okay, as a symbol of their party. At campaign stops, fans greeted Strom Thurmond with American flags, state flags, and Confederate battle flags. But desegregation progressed. Desegregation continued. Okay, so this is 1948. As it passed milestones like the Supreme Court ruling of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, which gave African-American children access to all schools. The Confederate battle flag popped up more and more as a symbol of opposition to the civil rights movement. Okay. And then what's going to happen is in 1961, to honor the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Civil War, South Carolina, which was the first state to secede from the Union, South Carolina lawmakers raised the Confederate battle flag over the state house. This is what these white supremacists did. They raised the battle flag over the state house because the civil rights movement is ramping up. You had the Montgomery bus boycott, December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956. You have the 4-year economic boycott in Tuskegee, Alabama from 1957 to 1961. Okay. You're going to have the Albany campaign in Albany, I think it was Albany, Georgia, 1961 to 1962. That's going to fail. That's going to lead to the Birmingham campaign, Birmingham, Alabama, 1963, which is going to be a success to bring about desegregation. But 1961, 100th year of the beginning of the Civil War, which starts April 12th, 1961, South Carolina, the first state to succeed from the Union, is going to raise this Confederate battle flag on the state's capital. Okay, so 1961, to honor the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Civil War, South Carolina lawmakers raised the Confederate battle flag over the state house. So in the year 2000, it was moved to the flagpole next to a soldier's monument, and its position there was protected by the 2000 Heritage Act. Okay, this is why I tell activists you have to study law. Okay, and how's everybody doing today? I know people just tuning in. Hey, I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. We're dealing with dispelling 5 myths about slavery, but we've done about 10 of them. Okay. And I teach an online course called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So this is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach as well. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. So as soon as you register, you can watch the first 3 sessions we've done. We also have 12 hours of bonus content. Full course is only $40. I'm gonna post a link again here. You can register for it. This is just a sample of the type of information we deal with. And I'm going to do a special session tonight, right around 8 o'clock. We'll do an overview of the first 3 classes. Okay, so if you're just registering, we'll do an overview of the first 3 classes from about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 9:30 p.m. And that'll help get you caught up. Okay. Okay, Sherilyn said the earlier comment was for Justin, not me. Okay, that's fine. So we remember when what's her name? You had the activist Bree Newsom that climbed up the flagpole in South Carolina, took down the Confederate battle flag. Everybody up there cheering, stuff like this. I'm sitting there looking at this. I said, this is some idiotic nonsense. It didn't make sense. And what did they do? They took her down, arrested her, and put another flag up. Why? Because that, first of all, that flag is up there because of the Heritage Act of the year 2000. And the only way that flag will come down is to pass both houses of the state legislature by a 2/3 majority vote and to be signed into law by the governor. Not somebody climbing up a pole, taking it down. And then they released a statement saying the president hasn't done anything about it. Do you understand law? You understand states' rights? The president has nothing to do with that. See, this is why I tell activists, look, there's 2 things you need to understand. Number 1 is law. Number 2 is history. Because if you understand either one of those, you're going to get your ass in a lot of trouble. Because I talk to a lot of activists. I interview some of them, things like that. A lot of them do not understand law, do not understand history. That flag was up there because of the Heritage Act of 2000. Okay, so if you look at this article, if you read this article once again, This is from CNN.com. Let me blow it up here so you can see it. Once again, this talks about the Heritage Act. This is why when they put out this statement from Bree Newsom's group, it may have been her directly or her group, and they said nobody's doing anything about the flag. The president's not doing anything. I'm like, do you understand law? In 2000, the Confederate battle flag was moved to a flagpole next to a soldier's monument, and its position there was protected by the 2000 Heritage Act, which is law. The act said that any changes to the act will require a, quote, 2/3 vote of each house of the General Assembly, end quote. This is dealing with law, not emotion. Okay, but there's another thing the state legislature can do. It can vote to repeal the law altogether. And this is what happened. They repealed it. Okay. And Governor Nikki Haley, who's now Ambassador Nikki Haley. Okay. Don't know why. I mean, you're dealing with a basket of deplorables there in the White House. You're dealing with a basket of deplorables there in the White House. She signed it into law. Okay. Even though there was opposition, because when it got to the state legislature, they debated that for 14 hours. They debated that till about 1 or 2 o'clock the following morning. You had one organization that was in opposition of that flag being taken down, even though 9 African Americans were shot and killed by Dylan Roth in the Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. And this organization sent out 50,000 robocalls to people who live in South Carolina to get them to put pressure on their members of the state legislature in the House to get them not to repeal this act. 50,000 robocalls. Go research this. This was deep. Okay. So we've dispelled about 10 myths now. Okay. All right. So this is just some of the info. So hopefully this helped some of you all today. Hopefully this cleared up some misinformation. Okay, the last myth. I told you this last myth. The South seceded from the Union over the issue of states' rights, not slavery. All right. And this issue came out when you had the debate over the Confederate battle flag. This issue came out, right? So the myth that the Civil War was not fundamentally a conflict over slavery would have been a surprise to the original founders of the Confederacy. In the original declaration of the causes of their succession in December of 1860, South Carolina's delegates cited, quote, an increasing hostility over the part of the non-slave holding states to the institution of slavery, quote unquote. According to them, the Northern interference with the return of fugitive slaves was violating their constitutional obligations. They also complained that some states in the New England tolerated abolitionist societies and allowed black men to vote. Okay, according to them, the Northern interference. Let me close that out. According to them, the Northern interference with the return of fugitive slaves was violating their constitutional obligations. So you had a Fugitive Slave Act, okay, of right around 1850. Fugitive Slave Act. And you had a previous Fugitive Slave Act that President George Washington signed into law around 1793. And South Carolina was saying that Northern interference with the return of fugitive slaves was violating their constitutional obligations. They also complained that some states in New England tolerated abolitionist societies and allowed black men to vote. So South Carolina is saying, wait a second, you're interfering with our states' rights, but it was states' rights to maintain slavery. South Carolina said you're interfering with this, okay? And then if we look at this other document, let's see. The Atlantic had because I have a ton of notes here. The Atlantic had a article dealing with this. Let me see, where is that other note dealing with Memorial Day? I have it there. That's Knights Templar. That's my stuff on the Knights Templar. Where is this is the Declaration of Independence. Where is my notes dealing with that? Okay. But theatlantic.com has a good article dealing with why the Civil War was fought. So you can look that up also. And I think this is it here. Okay, here we go. I have notes all over the place here. Okay. So when we look at, so the Atlantic.com has an article called Why There Was a Civil War. Why There Was a Civil War from May 1st, 2017. And when you look at Mississippi, when they seceded from the Union, Mississippi said, quote, our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. Okay. When Louisiana seceded from the Union, they said the people of the slaveholding states are bound together by the same necessity and determination to preserve African slavery. The people of the slaveholding states are bound together by the same necessity and determination to preserve African slavery, quote unquote. When Texas seceded from the Union, Texas said the servitude of the African race as existing in these states is mutually beneficial to both bond and free, and is abundantly authorized and justified by the experience of mankind and revealed in the revealed will of the Almighty Creator as recognized by all Christian nations. This is what Texas said when they seceded from the Union. Okay, so they were claiming states' rights. Okay, but it was states' rights to maintain slavery. They were claiming states' rights, but it was states' rights to maintain slavery. Okay, now James W. Lowen, who wrote the book Lies My Teacher Told Me. Okay. James W. Lowen, he also wrote the book, He also wrote the book, The Confederate and Neo-Confederate Reader. He wrote in an article for the Washington Post, he said, quote, in fact, Confederates oppose states' rights. That is the right of northern states not to support slavery. The idea, quote unquote, the idea that the war was somehow not about slavery, but about the issue of states' rights was perpetuated by later generations, anxious to redefine their ancestors' sacrifices as a noble protection of the Southern way of life. At the time, however, Southerners had no problem claiming the protection of slavery as the cause of their break with the Union and the Civil War that followed. Okay, so they are seceding from the Union because of slavery. It's states' rights, but it's the right to maintain African slaves. Now, the Civil War was not fought to end slavery. The Civil War was fought to bring the South back into the Union. The Civil War was not fought to end slavery. The Civil War was fought to bring the South back into the Union. Okay. And in his inaugural address, May 4th, 1861, what's his name? Abraham Lincoln, he proclaimed that it was his duty to maintain the Union. And he also declared that he had no intention of ending slavery where it existed or of repealing the fugitive slave law. Okay. So Lincoln wanted to bring the South back into the Union. This is why he issued the Emancipation Proclamation January 1st, 1863, which basically said the slaves in the states of rebellion were free. Slaves still in the border states like Delaware, Missouri, and Kentucky and Maryland, okay, they were still slaves because those states, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri, those four states stayed with the Union. They were allowed to keep their slaves. And then selected areas in the Confederacy that came back under Union control, they were still allowed to keep their slaves also. So the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. It was a military strategy designed to bring the South back into the Union, because the South was the economic engine of the United States at the time. But we need to stop teaching our children that Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. Okay, it's going to ultimately lead up to the 13th Amendment. Okay, but you read, but it's the 13th Amendment that actually is going to the 4 million enslaved Africans actually going to freedom. Okay. And a lot of people talk about, well, it re-enslaved them. It's going to re-enslave a portion of them. All 4 million were not re-enslaved and put in prison, things like this. No. You're going to have a sharecropping system, and you're going to have the convict leasing system. Okay. But overwhelming majority of them were not in the convict leasing system. Overwhelming majority of African people were not in prison. Okay. So that's just another myth. All right. So let's go quickly. Some of your comments. We have to get out of here. How'd you all like this type of information? Let's say all the wars. Okay. How'd you all like this type of information here? Hopefully this helped dispel some myths. Where can you get the t-shirt? Go to pioclothing.com, pioclothing.com, Power in One Clothing. They have these t-shirts there and others. Okay. They need to give me an endorsement deal for wearing this shirt when I do my broadcast. Hey, I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. So we were dispelling myths about slavery. We dealt with a number of myths, more than 5. We dealt with more like 10. And we talked about how African people were here in this land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years. I teach an online course called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we do, the sessions are normally on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As soon as you register, you can watch the first 3 classes. All the sessions are recorded. We do it live. All the sessions are recorded. You can ask questions also. You can tune in from around the world. We have about 12 hours of bonus content also. About 12 hours of bonus content. We're going to do a session. We're going to do a review session, I should say, this evening, right around 8:30 or so. I had to push it back to 8:30. And we'll do a review of the first 3 classes. So if you just registered today, we'll do a review of the first 3 classes to get you caught up. You can ask questions also. We posted the link there. It says register here. And how'd you all like this type of information? Who wants to register for the online class? Class is only $40. Okay. And all the sessions are recorded also. So we have a ton of information there. 60% of the Buffalo Soldiers were from the South. 60% of the Buffalo Soldiers were from the South. Where'd you get that information from? You're talking about where the Buffalo Soldiers come into existence about 1866. That's after the Civil War ends. The black race ruled for over 12,000 years. Is much more than 12,000 years. Definitely much more than 12,000 years. Okay. Let's see. Okay, if you have any questions, any other questions, go ahead and post them here. Oh, some of the other things that we deal with in the class. So we do what is the transatlantic slave trade? What were some of the events that led up to it starting? We try to approach this as much as possible chronologically. Historical events don't happen in a vacuum. They are a sequence. They are the result of a sequence of historical events that take place that lead up to another event happening. We deal with the role that Christopher Columbus played also. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. When did Africans first come to the U.S. as enslaved Africans? Like we talked about. We deal with a lot of archaeological discoveries as well. Freemasonry, America, and the founding fathers. The origins of the word America in Africa. Also, the problem with slave movies and how the slave movies and slave TV shows help to lock us into the 1619 myth, the myth that our history started in this country, August 20th, 1619, which is not true. Do with ancient Kemet, Asar, Aset, and Heru, and the origins of the Immaculate Conception story, links to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and early Christianity. And we also do with the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712, because Willie Lynch never historically existed. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Take that Willie Lynch letter, throw it in the garbage can. There's language in that speech that didn't even exist in 1712, the early 18th century. When you study world history, you don't read about a Willie Lynch anywhere in the 18th century. Willie Lynch never historically existed. The Willie Lynch letter was created in 1970 by Dr. Kwabena Ashanti. who's still alive today. You can Google his name, Dr. Kwabena, Kwabena, Dr. Kwabena Ashanti, Ashanti, I think is how he spells it. It's a fraud. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Okay. And you can also look at you can listen to the interviews I've done with Professor Manu Pim. Professor Manu Pim. We have a slide here for it, I think. And you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can listen to it. Yeah, right here. This is Professor Manu Pim. I interviewed him November 21st, 2013. It's on YouTube. Just Google Professor Manu Pim fake Willie Lynch speech. It'll come up with the interview I did with him. And we go through and breaks it down. Willie Lynch never historically existed. It's a fraud. There is no Willie Lynch syndrome. It's a fraud. Okay. It only exists in your mind. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Take that garbage, throw it in the garbage can where it belongs. Okay. Dr. Kwabena Ashanti meant well, but it's caused more harm than good. All right. He never historically existed. Okay. So let's see here. All right. Checking some more of your comments. Willie Lynch is a fraud. Willie Lynch never historically existed. There's language in the Willie Lynch, there's words in the Willie Lynch letter that did not exist in the 18th century. You have to understand sentence structure in the 18th century. You have to understand words like self-refueling. That's a 20th century word that came from the transportation industry. There are words in that letter that did not exist in the early 18th century. This is why you have to understand history. You have to understand sentence structure. Okay. He talks about on the banks of the King James. He talks about King James. Well, the queen at the time in 1712 was Queen Anne. And King James wasn't even a significant king. King James, when you study England, it wasn't enough to us, to many of us, because of the King James version of the Bible, and because Christianity was forced upon us during slavery, we think King James was a significant king. But no. This is why you have to understand history. Okay. Willie Lynch, Dr. Kwabena Ashanti created it to show African Americans how they were acting like slaves. But it did more harm than good because people think it's real history and don't study real history. So they think a fairy tale is real history. Professor Manu Pim wrote 3 articles called Death to the Willie Lynch Speech. Death to the Willie Lynch Speech at his website, manuandpim.com. Manuandpim.com. Okay. And read those articles. Willie Lynch letters are fraud. All right. This is, we need to deal with real history. Okay. Proper documentation ends all conversation. We need to deal with real history. Okay. So you can, hopefully you like this type of information. You can register for our online class that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. If you like this type of information here, you're going to love the course because I deal with this and a lot more information. It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. We do the sessions live normally Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to do a special session tonight, a review of the first 3 classes around 8:30 or so. All the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch them over and over again. So it's going to blow you away. Okay. And it's taught by yours truly, Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. Class is only $40. You can order my DVD lectures from our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. Okay. We have a lot of information in there. We have a reading list of books. We have all my lectures there. We have video clips, audio podcasts of our shows, over 750 episodes. Okay. Of our radio shows, interviews I've done with a lot of scholars. Check that out also. All right. So, okay, we have the information there. And yeah, Kenny says, say that again. They think a fairy tale is real history. This is what happens when you don't understand real history. You think a fairy tale is real history. It's a fairy tale. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Okay, so look, guys, we got to get out of here. See you all in class. Hey, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next time. And I'll be around for a few more minutes here on Facebook if you have any questions for me on the thread of the broadcast. Remember, right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll see you in class. Peace.